If you take a look at the ocean today, you'll find some pretty wild stuff. Giant squids the size of school buses, great whites that could swallow you whole, box jellyfish that can kill you in 3 minutes flat, and that's just Tuesday. But here's the thing that'll keep you up at night. Modern oceans are basically a petting zoo compared to what used to swim around down there. I'm talking about the prehistoric seas, where evolution clearly lost the plot and started throwing ideas at the wall like a caffeinated artist with no deadline. And I'm not even talking about your standard mosasaurs and plesiosaurs here, though, yeah, those were pretty metal. No, I'm talking about the truly unhinged ones, the creatures that made paleontologists look at their fossils and go, wait, evolution was drunk that day, right? Because here's what most people forget. Oceans have been around way longer than dinosaurs ever were. We're talking billions of years of evolution experimenting with designs that make modern marine life look embarrassingly normal. And some of these creatures, so alien you'd think they belonged on a different planet entirely. Far from it. Over the ages, paleontologists have identified marine animals so bizarre they make the strangest land creatures look plain. The rules were different down there. Eyes like dinner plates, shells like paper clips, forests made of animals. Dinosaurs? Cute. The ocean was the freak show. Enter at your own risk. First, a dolphin-shaped torpedo with volleyballs for eyes, 9 inches across, bone-reinforced like a submarine window. It didn't see the ocean. It vacuumed light out of it. Night vision DLC, installed at birth. Ophthalmosaurus, whose name literally means eye lizard. Eyes measuring up to 23 centimeters or about 9 inches in diameter. 2 of those stuck on either side of your head. Anatomy built for darkness. This marine reptile lived during the Jurassic period, roughly 165 to 150 million years ago. It was an ichthyosaur, which is basically nature's way of saying, what if we took a reptile and made it cosplay as a dolphin? They could grow to about 4 to 5 meters or 13 to 16 feet long. Bottlenose dolphin size. Cute, right? Wrong, because those massive eyes weren't just for dramatic effect. They were deep diving equipment. And when I say deep, I mean these guys were going down to 600 meters or about 2,000 feet, where the ocean turns into a nightmare zone of shadows and things that go bump in the dark. At those depths, you need to collect every single photon of light, like a low-light sensor hoarding the last photons. And those enormous eyes did exactly that, allowing Ophthalmosaurus to spot prey, dodge predators, and navigate in conditions that would make a submarine nervous. Additionally, the bony structure supporting these eyes could withstand pressure changes that would make your head implode. Night vision goggles and pressure resistance combined. And it worked, because Ophthalmosaurus fossils show up everywhere from Europe to North America to Argentina. If it swam today, your GoPro night dive would turn into its grocery run. Forward-facing eyes. In a mosasaur. Not cute. Predator mode. Phosphorosaurus. An owl that forgot how to blink and learned to swim. This was a mosasaur, and mosasaurs were the undisputed murder machines of the late Cretaceous seas, some growing to sizes that would make a great white shark nervous. But Phosphorosaurus, this one was the runt, measuring only about 3 to 4 meters or 10 to 13 feet long, crocodile-sized, almost adorable, except for those forward-facing eyes. And if you hear that a marine reptile has forward-facing eyes, your brain should immediately start screaming, because that's not normal, that's apex predator territory. Forward-facing eyes mean binocular vision. Binocular vision means depth perception, and depth perception is what you need when you're hunting in conditions where you can't see your hand in front of your face. The name Phosphorosaurus, meaning light-bearing lizard, isn't because it glowed. It's because this thing hunted during twilight and night when bioluminescent prey emerged. The skull structure and eye socket positioning point to nocturnal specialization. So while its larger cousins like Mosasaurus and Tylosaurus terrorized things in broad daylight, Phosphorosaurus carved out its own niche by working graveyard hours. Less competition, more squid, and you get to hunt things that can't see you coming. Yet like all mosasaurs, it vanished 66 million years ago when the asteroid hit. The night shift ended permanently. Most reptiles tried not to drown. This one brought ankle weights, bones so dense they're basically a built built-in elevator to the abyss, a free lane below 1,600 feet. No competition, all buffet. You see, most plesiosaurs had light, buoyant bones to help them float near the surface like pool noodles with teeth. But Abyssosaurus evolved its own biological weight belt, allowing it to drop into the deep ocean like a weapon with a destination. And we're not talking about going a bit deeper than its cousins. Based on bone density and comparisons with modern deep divers like sperm whales, this thing could have gone down to 500 meters or more. That's over 1,600 feet. That's even your nightmares need a flashlight territory. Why would anything want to live down there? Simple, free real estate. The deep ocean was full of squid and fish that never came near the surface, and zero competition from other predators who were too chicken to follow. Abyssosaurus basically found an all-you-can-eat buffet that nobody else knew about and set up shop. And clearly this strategy paid off because several specimens have been found, suggesting they were doing pretty well for themselves. Unfortunately, like many early Cretaceous, 125 million years ago, marine reptiles, they eventually disappeared. It found the abyss first. Everything else just lived above it. Imagine a shell that rage-quit spirals and became a 6-foot paperclip. Terrible swimmer. Spectacular lifespan, 200 years. Evolution looked at pasta and said, yes, that. So slow it outlived empires. Then one rock ended the patience project. See, most ammonites had shells that coiled in tight spirals. Neat, compact, easy to understand. But Diplomoceras, this absolute madman, started with a small coil, then suddenly straightened out, went in a random direction for a bit, and then hooked back on itself like it forgot where it was going. The result looks like something a bored AI would draw if you asked it to invent a new piece of pasta. And this shell could grow to over 2 meters, or about 6.5 feet long. That's taller than most people. Imagine trying to swim around with a 6-foot crazy straw strapped to your body. Sounds like a nightmare, right? Because it was. Diplomoceras was probably the world's worst swimmer, likely just drifting through the open ocean like depressed kelp. But here's where it gets absolutely bonkers. This terrible design may have let them live for up to 200 years. 200 years. At least that's what some paleontologists think, based on growth ring analysis. Kind of like aging a tree. If they're right, that's longer than any cephalopod alive today by a factor of 10. Modern nautiluses live about 20 years max. Diplomoceras said, those are rookie numbers. Being a floating paperclip with no swimming ability whatsoever might have been the secret to immortality. Who knew? And clearly it worked, because they hung around through much of the late Cretaceous. Unfortunately, the asteroid 66 million years ago wiped out every single ammonite, Diplomoceras included. Clumsy swimmer, expert at time. No eyes, no mouth, no moving parts. A fractal feather that just stood there and ate the ocean. The Ediacaran's favorite interior decor, alive. Flat pack life form, some assembly not required. Animal? Plant? Software glitch? Paleontologists still argue at conferences, so what exactly was a charnid? Honestly, paleontologists are still having heated arguments about this at conferences, because these things don't fit into any category of life we understand. No eyes, no mouth, no organs, no way to move. They just existed, like cosmic horror furniture. Instead, they were immobile organisms that sat on the ocean floor, covered in repeating fractal patterns. Imagine a fern leaf, but in 3D, and it's an animal, and it makes no sense. These patterns followed specific branching structures that repeated at different scales, which is why they're called fractal. Nature basically invented mathematical art before math existed. Now you're probably thinking, okay, if they couldn't move and had no mouth, how did they eat? And congratulations, you've asked the question that keeps paleontologists awake at night. The current theory is they absorbed nutrients directly through their skin from the water, kind of like bacteria or fungi. Others think they might have housed symbiotic photosynthetic organisms like modern corals. But the truth? We have no idea. It's a biological mystery wrapped in an enigma covered in fractals. What we do know is that charnids could grow over a meter, or about 3 feet tall, and they covered large areas of the Ediacaran sea floor in bizarre gardens that would make surrealism look conventional. And for millions of years, these fractal alien beings were among the most common life forms on Earth. Just sitting there, being weird, doing whatever the hell charnids did. But then the Cambrian period rolled around 541 million years ago, and suddenly animals with hard parts, mouths, and actual hunting strategies showed up, and the Charnids gone, outcompeted by creatures that could actually do things. It didn't move. The world moved around it. Deep sea, zero light. Solution: cut the budget, ditch the eyes. Trilobites that turned darkness into a performance enhancement. Sight is expensive. Surviving isn't. Most trilobites had compound eyes, often pretty sophisticated ones that could see in multiple directions at once, useful for spotting the many things that wanted to eat you. But a subset of deep-sea trilobites decided to take a different approach. Fire your eyeballs and call it savings. And at first, this seems like the worst idea since eating the yellow snow. How are you supposed to survive if you can't see? But here's the thing. When you're living in the deep ocean where sunlight never reaches and it's pitch black 24/7, eyes become about as useful as a screen door on a submarine. In fact, they're worse than useless because they cost energy to maintain and can get damaged. When life gives you eternal darkness, why pay for equipment you'll never use? So these deep-sea trilobites evolved to rely on other senses instead. Sensitive antennae, specialized sensory structures on their bodies to detect vibrations, chemical signals, changes in water pressure. Basically, they became the daredevil of the trilobite world. Blind, but absolutely deadly. And this actually gave them an advantage, because without eyes, they could specialize even more for abyssal life, becoming perfectly adapted to an environment most other animals couldn't handle. Many developed smooth, streamlined bodies with reduced spines, making them better at navigating in total darkness without bumping into things. And clearly, this strategy worked, because blind trilobites persisted for hundreds of millions of years, with some lineages making it all the way to the Permian before the worst mass extinction in history wiped them out. But their legacy lives on in modern deep-sea creatures that made the same evolutionary trade-off. Eyes optional, survival mandatory. Alright, everything so far has been pretty wild, but we've saved what might be the most visually insane thing for last. Because if you could time travel back to the Paleozoic oceans, particularly before the Permian extinction, you wouldn't see an ocean. Not even close. You'd see an underwater forest that waves back at you like it notices you back. And this was the domain of the sea lilies, or more accurately, ancient giant crinoids. Now, calling them sea lilies is misleading because despite looking like flowers, these things were animals, specifically echinoderms, which makes them cousins to starfish and sea urchins. Evolution really said, what if we made a flower, but it's secretly a predator? Wild. But what made ancient sea lilies truly unhinged was their size. Modern crinoids are small and boring, maybe a foot tall if they're feeling ambitious, but their Paleozoic ancestors? Absolute units. Some species grew stalks over 20 meters or about 65 feet tall. That's taller than a 6-story building. And these weren't rare freaks either. They were everywhere. Imagine swimming through a forest of swaying 60-foot animal plants, all of them filtering the water with feathery arms covered in tiny grabby feet. It's beautiful. It's terrifying. It's nature beta testing an alien planet's ecosystem right here on Earth. And at the top of each stalk was a crown of feathery arms that filtered plankton and particles from the water. Thousands upon thousands of these things clustered together, swaying in the currents, creating what must have been the most surreal sight in all of natural history. A forest that was alive, actually alive, not metaphorically, literally waving at you with hundreds of feathery appendages. Additionally, these crinoid forests weren't just pretty. They were crucial ecosystems that provided shelter and food for countless other organisms. Fish, invertebrates, even smaller crinoids that would attach to the bigger ones like oceanic freeloaders. It was a whole underwater city made of animals pretending to be plants. HOA rules enforced by current. Unfortunately, the universe looked at this magnificent underwater garden and said, delete. The Permian-Triassic extinction event, the same one that annihilated 95% of all life on Earth, absolutely decimated the crinoids. We're talking about a near-total wipeout. Over 95% of all crinoid species vanished. The giant stalked forms were hit especially hard, with most going completely extinct. The few survivors were much smaller and less dramatic than their towering ancestors. Modern crinoids still exist, and some are actually pretty cool, but they're a shadow of what once was. The massive forests are gone, replaced by scattered individuals and small clusters. So, there you have it. 7 prehistoric sea monsters evolution should have cancelled, from the volleyball-eyed Ophthalmosaurus to the paperclip-shelled Diplomoceras, from the fractal alien Charna to the towering forests of giant sea lilies. The prehistoric oceans were filled with creatures that took evolution's instruction manual, threw it in the garbage, and started freestyling. And the craziest part? These are just 7 examples out of thousands, possibly millions, of bizarre marine organisms that have existed over Earth's history. The ocean has been nature's testing ground for the most unhinged biological experiments imaginable, and most of them we'll never even know about. Dinosaurs were fun. Sure, big lizards with teeth. Cool. But the ocean? The ocean was evolution's unhinged experimental lab, where the instruction manual got shredded and common sense took a permanent vacation. And judging by what's still lurking in the deep sea today, that experiment never really ended. It's still going, right now, probably cooking up something that'll make future paleontologists look at its fossils and go, what the hell was evolution thinking? Thanks for watching, and until next time on Dead Curious.